listening to Hear the Chew Bubblegum, recorded from a secret location in the city that moves mountains.
Greetings.
We come in peace.
How's it going today, Cronkite?
Oh, it's going pretty good. How about you?
I am doing good. It's been a good week so far. It's been hot, highs in the 90s.
Yes, it has.
But I'm not going to complain because I'd rather have summer weather than winter weather.
It has been hot. I would rather have spring or fall weather myself.
Well, that's okay, too. That's okay. Episode 31 is what we're doing right now. Roundtable Part 2 with our good friends Elliott from Elliott's Articles and the Spooky Family, and Justin Perkins from Talk Junkie.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know how we're going to top part 1.
Well, we're going to play part 2 here in just a few moments.
That's going to top part 1?
No, I didn't say that. I said we're going to play part 2.
No, but that's what I said. I don't know how we're going to top part 1.
Oh.
Because it was an excellent show.
Yes, it was a very excellent show.
I had a good time.
I noticed you have a piece of paper in your hand.
I do. On July.
What does that piece of paper say, sir?
I'm glad you asked because I'm going to tell you. July 31st of this year, Pikeville Toy and Comic Con, we are going to be there. You and I, Goose.
Yes, we will.
Cronkite, in Pikeville, Appalachian Wireless Arena. It's on.
Yes.
Their website, of course, is pikevillecomiccon.net. They also have a Facebook page, or you can contact the e-store, Comic and Tech Shop, on Facebook, or call 606-263-4946. And we're going to be there. We're going to be walking around.
And that's what you hope to be hearing, right?
Stop interrupting me.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We're going to be there. We're going to be walking around. We've been talking to the folks, seeing what's up, what's going on, what's going down. Hopefully, we can get some pretty good interviews out of it.
I think we should be able to. I think we definitely will be able to.
That's going to be our clique.
Yes, it will be. Well, no further delay. Let's go ahead and get to part 2 of the roundtable with myself, my good buddy Cronkite, Elliott, and Justin.
Today I feel so down. You told me to go away. Miles and miles.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Justin Perkins, and I'm here on Here to Chew Bubblegum, Here to Chew Bubblegum, and welcome back to the roundtable discussion.
Oh, fine intro.
Thank you.
You have never done one that fine before.
Well, you know what? Maybe you should hire him.
I get tongue-tied. If it's planned, I can't do it. It has to be. I have to think it out.
Spot of the moment. Well, Cronkite, we're going to close out this segment with conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it's one that I was kind of nervous about doing.
Okay.
Even though it happened 20 years ago, it's still a little fresh in a lot of people's minds, and I don't know. I don't want to call this a conspiracy and kind of piss all over everyone's memorial or anything, but there are a number of conspiracies surrounding 9/11. Should we talk about them?
Sure, go for it.
You mean like Back to the Future predicted it? Of course that's true. It's very true. Please quit sending my family evil emails asking us why we were stupid enough to believe that, okay? We weren't. We just wanted to entertain you. That was it. We just presented it as entertainment.
I thought The Simpsons predicted it.
Yeah,
They predict everything.
Yeah, they are like the next Nostradamus. So, all right, I mean, where do we even dive in? I mean, there are just so many conspiracy theories around this. Let's just start out of the way. Just get it out of the way. Do you think the government did it?
No.
Elliott?
No, I don't.
Goose?
No.
Okay.
Do I? Okay. Have you all heard the Pearl Harbor theory that we didn't do it? Of course, we didn't do Pearl Harbor, but we knew it was coming. Yeah.
I'm kind of in the same area, but I don't think. I mean, I think if there was, I do. We have one of the greatest intelligence gathering agencies in the world. I don't see how they didn't see it coming.
Now, at that time, we had 3 of the greatest intelligence organizations in the world who did not communicate and always wanted to hide things so they could be the people that got to break stuff. I think that's the issue.
Yeah, that's the issue.
So it's a lack of communication.
And there was a plan. There was a document on George W. Bush's desk that said Bin Laden could try, attacking targets with airlines. Like, that was an actual document that he had.
Clinton was told the same thing.
Yeah.
They had aides come out and say Clinton was very well aware that was their next plan.
Yeah, so they knew it was but it was like you can't predict when it's going to happen.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like it's one
I
of those
think there was even a CNN report, like in June of 2001, where a reporter actually went out and spoke to Osama bin Laden.
Yeah.
And, at that time, he was still wanted. And a CNN reporter went out and found him, and our government couldn't. Right. I mean, there's something up there with the whole thing, but I do not think that the government had anything to do with it.
You always have to have a bad guy.
One of the theories is that we let it happen so that we could allow for the new America, the new world, whatever, to take over, to kind of take effect. And granted, September 10th, 2001 and September 12th, 2001, 2 completely different Americas.
Yeah.
100%.
I'd always heard, we did it so that we could go to war, make money. But what throws me off from that is, if that were the case, the intelligent thing for us to have done would have been to immediately point it towards Iraq to begin with, because that was our desired target, obviously. If that was the case, if that's what we were doing, really, that it's handy in the fact that you've got an organization to go after and not a country, but their ties to Iraq were nothing at that time. And that's what makes me think that if we were going to plan it, we would have definitely put different actors in the seat. It didn't go in the right direction for us as a country to who we wanted to be at war with. Bin Laden doesn't have oil, and that's always been the thing. Well, we went to Iraq for oil. Okay, if we did go to Iraq for oil and we did do September 11th ourselves, shouldn't we just said it was a bunch of Iraqis bombed us? That would be far more logical.
It would, yeah. And you're right, but at the same time, I mean, didn't Bin Laden have ties with the Bushes and the Clintons? Even didn't his family even have several oil wells in Texas?
But what you have to look at is his isolation from his family. His family, I don't think, had a whole lot to do with him. They're a very wealthy family. He was he just become fanaticized and really kind of separated out from them. But
when he was fighting the Russians in Afghanistan, after he was trained by America to fight the Russians in Afghanistan.
Yeah. Everybody has a connection to George Sr. So if they're a worldwide player, everybody, you look at Iran Contra, things of that nature that happened under Reagan. I don't really think that Reagan's the type of person that knowingly does those things. It's not always in fashion to defend any president, but Reagan, as far as what he showed publicly, I never seen anything to me that made me think Reagan's the type of guy that would be involved in anything like that. Right. On the other hand, with George Sr., who, you look at his presidency. His presidency was clean. It's not that he done anything bad during his presidency. It's things before that are questionable in his past. His close ties with the CIA previous to that, and then his close ties with Rumsfeld, who has ties to the CIA. Most of Junior's cabinet had ties to CIA, and CIA most definitely were involved with the Iran-Contra, so, I put him there. But then you look at the point that W's in office, the CIA had the most information, not the NSA, and I think they kind of take the fall back on it. But it's hard for me. I say that because that's what I've heard, and that's just me speaking unintelligently. I just, based on what I've heard, CIA had a certain amount of information, NSA had a certain amount, and if you combine those two together, it's obvious that in September, they're going to bomb a large target in New York, and they're going to use commercial flights for it. Separately, those two pieces of intel don't necessarily get you all the way there. Right. And, supposedly there's been a lot of changes since then that have required these groups to work together. And, you know, there's no way for us to know as citizens if that's true. But if anything, that's the biggest conspiracy to come out of 9/11 is, you know, you've got basically the president and what we consider the government doing one thing, and then you have the intelligence agencies working on their own. And go look up military actions that we've been involved in, actual wars we've been involved in, and what branches of the military were actually participants in that war. The CIA has been at war with more places in more battles than our military combined. You know, that's who we send to war. If something's in Bogota or, you know, the first initial days of Vietnam, you know, wars that maybe we don't have a public impact in, Syria, things of that nature, initially that was all CIA stuff. You know, a lot of what was going on in Afghanistan was the CIA. You know, you see these guys with the big beards and long hair. This is not military guys. They're not required to stay at a military appearance for a reason. They can blend in. Most of those guys are spooks. Most of those guys are CIA.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. All right, I'm going to throw this out there. Did Flight 77 crash in the Pentagon, or was it a missile?
You know, I've seen that video 1,000 times, and I've seen the damage that it left, and it's hard to say it was a plane. I mean, there's no wing. There's no. It's a large hole. There's no wing damage, but there are pieces on the ground. I don't like to even think differently about that one. Like I just want to trust that it was a plane, because the alternative is just a horrible thing to think about.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, I don't think it was a missile. I really don't. I would like to say that our government wasn't involved directly in any of this. I would like to say that.
Okay. You would like to say that.
But it's hard. And that one, there are two things that make me question sometimes. And it's the Pentagon, and it is Building 7 in New York. Everything else, and I don't think they were directly involved. I don't know. It's just one of those cases.
Yeah.
But here's my thing, and this is what nobody can ever answer for me when I talk to people who truly believe that the government was in charge of this. If it wasn't the plane that hit the Pentagon, what happened to that plane, and more importantly, what happened to the people that were on board that plane?
Yeah.
I mean, there were families on that plane. There were, you don't hide those people, or like, if you do, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. That's all I'm saying about that one.
To me, in order for that to be a missile, then you kind of, to that level of conspiracy, you've got to include the military. It's not just intelligence agencies. I think if they'd had enough warning ahead of time that they'd really known that plane had never hit the Pentagon, I honestly, wholeheartedly believe that they would sacrifice the White House to save the Pentagon, because the people in control have a lot more tied up in that Pentagon than they do there. And
that's very true.
You talk about the plane possibly being shot down in the field. If they'd had that big of a heads up on any of those planes, the first one they'd have shot down would have been the one in New York. I know that, you'd had a lot of debris from shooting it down, but I feel like it would have been a necessity for them to do that. The first one they would have shot down more likely would have been the one to hit the Pentagon. It's one that, from the time it happened till now, I have trouble seeing any benefit to the conspiracy. Obviously, I numerous times, I think I've said it twice on the call-in and here. I've mentioned September 10th, mentioned a lot of times in the past. I don't feel that, they blew up the World Trade Center to hide that money. I believe we just lost focus.
You didn't need this kind of level of something to hide the conversation of the money.
No, you just had to do what they did. Just quit talking about it, and then everybody else quits.
Yeah.
I do find Building 7 strange, too.
Building 7 is strange.
But I think Building 7, again, I don't think the government was involved. I think the people who owned Building 7 were the people responsible for that. I think they had,
I think the reason they say that the government was involved isn't that where the CIA...
There was a lot of government documents in that building.
CIA offices.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, in the overall scheme of things,
right.
I don't think that they were the ones who pulled that. I think maybe it was just the people who had the money. Again, follow the money. The entrance money for Building 7, if it's not been damaged, and it was damaged slightly, but it should have been okay. If you go ahead and like get rid of that building,
Right.
the opportunity has presented itself. Well, now I've got money. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and here's the thing.
And I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying that if there was a conspiracy, that would probably be where it was.
Well, once the two towers collapsed, everything in that area was destroyed. I mean, everything was not worth saving. So either way, that was. So the question is, why would that building need to be brought down? They were going to destroy it anyway. So the question, but here's why I'm struggling with. They said it collapsed because of the uncontrolled fires, and I'm not a structural expert by any means, but a fire. We understand why the Twin Towers collapsed, by the weight and the sheer heat that was involved, but there was no fuel fire in Building 7.
Right.
So how did an uncontrolled fire?
Well, I think too, on an insurance perspective, and I could be wrong, but if it is destroyed during a terrorist attack versus we have slight damage, but it's we need to get rid of the building,
You're going to get a bigger payout
you're going to get a bigger payout with a terrorist attack. And I could be wrong about that, but I think I've read that somewhere. So
right.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Now, here's an interesting fact, too, that, I mean, all three of those buildings were insured by Allstate. Mm-hmm. And I know this because I had Allstate insurance at that time. And just a few months after that, my premium skyrocketed. And I even asked why. And they said, well, Allstate is the one that had the towers, Twin Towers insured, and Building 7.
So it's possible flows behind it.
Yeah. But no, Flo's
progressive.
Yeah,
exactly.
Progressive, yeah. That's what
destroy the
wants you to
Allstate.
think.
Yeah.
So the thing. All right. So do you think they demolitioned the building, like in
Building 7?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think they went in there?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a close proximity to the Twin Towers. Like,
isn't there radio chatter, like a recorded radio chatter of somebody saying "pull it" right before it collapsed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think what I heard was
and
everybody pull back or something like that.
Well, I mean, yeah. Here's the thing: like, if you're caught up in the moment, you could say whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying that's proof.
Sure.
But I'm saying I think that's where that comes from. That's where one of the big conspiracies comes from.
Yeah.
I don't know, boys. Like, I understand why people think, especially when you know about stuff like Operation Northwoods. You know what Operation Northwoods is?
Everybody's shaking their head, so I'm gonna say yes.
Okay. It was a plan. It was a plan that was made back during the Cold War when Kennedy was in office. And basically it said that we would need the CIA and the Department of Defense were the people who came up with this plan. And it was that we would need to create some kind of event to bring America into conflict so that we could eventually take care of the people that we needed to take care of. And that sounds like what happened on September 11th. There was some sort of incident that happened that got us into a conflict eventually with the people we felt we needed to take care of, a.k.a. Iraq, even though they weren't the people who attacked us. Now, if you read Operation Northwoods, it's some of the things they suggest is hijacking planes, shooting down American planes or blowing up American ships, and then blaming it on other groups.
Gulf of Tonkin.
The Gulf of Tonkin
that's a
incident
we
in Vietnam,
we know that happened.
Yeah, that one's a verified one. But here's the thing. Operation Northwoods, some of the people involved with writing Operation Northwoods were Rumsfeld, Cheney, these people, these names that just happen to be in the White House when this happens. Mm-hmm. So another thing that a lot of people don't realize is the lone gunman. You heard me, if you listened to my episode, we talked about the lone gunman. The lone gunman episode actually aired the previous spring.
The X-Files?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's a great show of all.
It was the lone gunman conspiracy. It was the spinoff. And
to this date, I think the episode's only aired one time.
It's only aired one time. But what happens is they use drone-piloted planes to crash into buildings because they, just like Operation Northwoods and all that stuff, and the lone gunman stopped it. But that happened right before. So Operation Northwoods was on some people's minds, especially conspiracy theory people, because those are the types of people who watch Lone Gunmen and X-Files, and, that's me. But, and then you bring that all together, so of course that's going to come up, especially when you realize who the players are.
And 11 months previous, the USS Cole was bombed.
Yes. When I was in college at the time, and I actually had, there was a guy who lived on my floor, and his mom died in the USS Cole operation.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, and see, and that's why I like, if you talk to people on the streets of New York City, the first thing they thought of was probably Bin Laden, and everybody's like, why? Why was Bin Laden's name? Well, the towers were attacked earlier.
Yeah,
In
what,
93?
93.
Yeah. Everybody was like, I've got kids today who, it's funny. Like, you see these kids on television and all these things, and they act like, they weren't alive when any of this stuff happens. And it's crazy to think that. It's crazy, especially to everybody in this room. It's
And
crazy
there's
to
a
think.
whole generation that was born after.
Right. But I watched an interview the other day on television, and they were like, we know that it's a conspiracy theory because there's a song by the Notorious B.I.G. that says blow up like the World Trade. And I was like, that's because they tried to blow up the World Trade in New York in the early 90s. And, like, kids don't make that connection anymore, and people don't make that connection anymore. And then when you find something like Operation Northwoods, you want to make that connection because it makes sense.
It does.
That makes it make sense. When people just blowing it up for the reasons they blew it up, to us, doesn't
my
make
apologies.
sense. You know what I'm saying?
Goose is so mad at me right
That's
now.
okay. I've sat here.
I'm not.
He's looked over
I'm
me.
not mad at you.
He's
I've
looked
hit
at
the table.
I turned his headphones off. I've hit it and everything. So I've took the heat on this one. But yeah, so 9/11 is. You're right. I'm feeling uncomfortable talking about it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about. But I really don't think it was our government that did it. And that's probably going to be the most controversial statement that we have made on this podcast since we started. You know what I'm saying?
And I totally agree with you. I don't think our government did it, but I do think that if there was any benefits to reap after that, our government received those benefits.
Well, they exploited it.
Yes.
I always call him President Cheney and Vice President Bush exploited it. I don't think that that's an unpopular opinion. I don't really have a whole lot of bad things to say about W. But Cheney, on the other hand, I do not trust to any degree whatsoever.
Right.
Would you ever go hunting with him?
No, most certainly not. I would definitely not want to have property that had oil on it if I lived in a foreign country and he was anywhere near that White House. I just wouldn't, But I'm not uncomfortable talking about it because if I thought for a second, if there was anything credible I saw that I thought it was a conspiracy theory, I'd say it. I don't believe anything should be censored and unsaid. Uncomfortable and unappealing discussion is still important discussion, whether you want to admit it or not.
Absolutely. And I think that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just deep within me. It's hard to even imagine.
Yeah. And I think maybe for people like us is that we were alive and we were watching it on television.
Oh,
as it
and I can
happened.
still tell you right where I was at when I heard about it.
And maybe it's still a little.
Well,
it's still a little sore and new for us.
I have a complete and total distrust for the government on a lot of issues, so I would have no problem whatsoever. But I'm like you guys. There's not enough there. I will never say anything's impossible.
True.
But I just don't see it.
At best, the government let it happen.
Oh, no doubt. It was a lack of communication, and also a lot of that kind of shows you what these intelligence services put first. What they put first is their ability to be the most important, and it is. Funding wise, you look at just funding. It's more important to be the NSA than it is to be the CIA, and that was not the case for years.
Right.
Well, I think even the government will admit that probably everybody had a small part of the actions that were going to happen on September 11th, but nobody wanted to share it to get it together.
Yeah, and they've come forward, and you have to give them credit for that. If you don't give them credit for much, they've come out and said, "This is our fault. We dropped the ball. Yeah. We didn't communicate, bilaterally, and we should have."
Yep, because everybody had a small piece of the puzzle, and yeah. What blows my mind more than anything is the flight instructor in Florida that has this conversation with the student that says, "I don't need to learn how to land. That's something you report.
And that is an absolute fact that he did say that.
That is 100% something you report. If nothing else, you report that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Have you seen the? There's an interview, and I cannot remember where I'm. I should be more prepared for this. I'm sorry, but there is. Do you remember the guy that was on television all the time, especially on I think WTBS? He would come out. He's not the Riddler from Batman, but he would come out in multicolored suits.
The guy that sold the book.
Matthew Lesko.
So they actually used Matthew Lesko's book to find grants and opportunities to get into that flight school.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So the book worked.
The book did work. Yes, obviously.
There's the conspiracy theory. That book worked.
But when one of the times when they went to the bank to try to get the money they needed for flight school or whatever, because they couldn't use the money that was being sent to them because that was supposed to go towards operations. There's a whole big thing about it. But the guy was in front of a loan officer, and the forms that he had filled out were done horribly. Like there was no way he was getting that loan. But he looked up and he saw a picture. The lady had a calendar or something at the Pentagon, and he was like, "Tell me about that. Tell me about that place." And she was like, what, the Pentagon? And then he was like, yes, tell me. I need to know everything about it. And she was like, I don't know anything about it. I'm a bank officer. And she goes, let me have that picture. And she was like, you want the picture of the Pentagon? Yes, I'll give you money for it. And he was trying to to me, that's suspicious behavior.
Suspicious.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That should have been reported. But maybe it was. And maybe it's one of those things where
That we've never heard about.
Maybe it's one of those things where the government didn't think it was important at the time.
Sure.
Like it was one of those, I don't know. It's just, but I think you're right. I think it was just the ball was dropped, and a lot of people point to, America, like the Patriot Act and all of that as well. It was used so they could implement this. No, I don't think that. I think that it happened, the ball was dropped, and this was them trying to
Take advantage of the situation.
Well, it maybe take advantage, but also maybe overreacting to the fact that they dropped the ball and to make sure that it would never happen again.
Well, another thing, we talk about these things that we think are weird and curious now. But you're looking at that through a lens that you can't take
absolutely,
back.
Absolutely.
I don't know how, saying what you're saying, I agree with that 100%. That's weird. But I don't know how I would have looked at that in 99, because I can tell you that prior to 2001, I could never have imagined, outside of Chuck Norris Invasion USA, I could never imagine people coming to this country and attacking us here. Pearl Harbor was, and it's not being derogatory towards Hawaii, but still, it's far enough away from the head of the snake that you got a chance to get out before you get struck. Right. Coming right here, coming to Kentucky, Texas, those places, the government's probably the least of your concern.
Yeah.
There's a lot of civilians that you really don't want to cross paths with. So, the thought of even something like that was alien to me. I couldn't imagine it.
Yeah, 100%. So, I don't know. It's strange to think about. And before we go any further, just will say rest in peace and
yes,
very sorry for anyone who was affected by it. The 2,996 people that were killed in the terrorist attacks, and the countless of servicemen and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice since then. Your thoughts, prayers are with us, and we were very, very sorry about that. Moving on, Flight 93. That's the one that crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Was it shot down?
No.
Or was it deliberately crashed?
If they'd had the ability to shoot it down, would they have shot it down? Yes. And I think the people on that plane, it would have been hard to explain to their families, but I think eventually in time, because you don't know where it was going. I really believe that those people saved somebody else by being selfless and taking that down. They weren't, I don't know, I don't think it was shot down, but I think it's almost like, even if it was, I'm fine with it getting out that it wasn't, because that's a slap in the face to those people that they were not able to do what they wanted to do, and those people done something that I don't know if I'd have been brave enough to do.
Yeah, I don't think there's an American today that would have, if they had been shot down, I don't think we would have held it against the government, knowing what we knew happened with the other three planes.
Yes.
But you're absolutely right. I think that the fact that these American citizens stood up, and that basically they were the first ones to fight back.
Yeah.
That's something that we need to. When I think of September 11th, I always think of that. we need to celebrate those people
Yes,
and
we
not
do.
remember the tragedy that happened that day. You
Yes,
need to
we do.
remember the firefighters and police officers that ran into the building as people were running out to try to save more people, and not focus on the fact that this organization pretty much brought America to her knees for about 2 hours. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't worry about that. Mr. Rogers always had that look for the helpers, look for the people who were running towards the problem, not running away from the problem. And I totally understand why you would run away from the problem. Don't get me wrong. I'm not shaming anybody who tried to get out of the building. But to me, 9/11 is no more a celebration of or a Remembrance Day for tragedy as it is a celebration of the heroes that actually did what they did that day.
Well, I think
Well said.
Yeah, very well
it
said.
proves we're stronger than those other countries in that regard, because
Absolutely.
that would have been an absolute breakdown for most countries. For
sure.
And it would have been, we may have went to war after that, but we didn't just go bombing innocent people and slinging stuff. Not to say we've never done that. Our drone history is pretty dismal, but still, we handled it in a and I feel it the way that Giuliani and every basically political person, it kind of put things aside, and I think all of our leaders stepped up and did a really good job. They kept their people calm, and it's a testament to the strength of Americans. I know people outside of America look at that as boastful and look at that as arrogant, and they can look at it any way they want. I think it's a factual statement. Mm-hmm. We probably have advantages that a lot of people don't have, but maybe as a result of those advantages, maybe not. We are a different breed than a lot of other countries and a lot of other people, and it's something I'm very proud of.
Definitely. All right, so moving on to the no planes theory. Complete bogus. There obviously were aircraft that hit those two twin towers.
I think the no planes theory is a slap in the face of everybody who died on a plane.
I agree.
I just...
When I turned on the TV, the first one had hit, so I actually got to see the second.
Yeah.
I mean, I seen what I seen. I don't know how
I saw the second one. I didn't see the first one, of course, because but I saw footage. There were students who filmed the first one hitting, but I didn't see it live. I saw the second one live. Yeah.
Now the only thing that I will say about that, so we think that it's civilian airliners, because you really couldn't tell much about them from the video footage. Or are these military fuel tankers?
You know what? You mess with perception when you see it videotaped on television. Has everybody here been to New York?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. When you get off the bus in New York City, it looks completely different than what you think it's supposed to look like because of what you've seen on movies or television or whatever. So, just with the perception of that plane as it comes into the building, everybody I know is like, oh, that's such a small plane. No, that plane was huge, and that building it hit
that
was
city is huge
because the city was huge. But the camera is only focusing on that small piece of sky, so everything looks different. So, yeah, I believe it was.
And a lot of kids, a lot of younger people are probably, I've been to Ground Zero, with the memorial and stuff, and there's not a lot there for comparison to the old skyline as far as what you see in the few videos, because they're straight up and they're showing. But I never put a whole lot of thought into that, because I'm just not. I don't get into aircraft. I don't know a lot about them. All I can go on by is what they told me. Hit it, and why go the trouble of disappearing these passengers? And it actually would have been so much easier if it was a military ship, plane, to just go, this came from overseas. We don't know. They brought this in. This is not ours at all. This belongs to them. That would be the easier thing. And how do you disprove that? So again, it goes back to if it is a conspiracy theory, it's the worst laid out conspiracy theory I've ever.
I agree. The only thing that is interesting to me is, so a jet airliner, they're huge, they're goofy looking, they're kind of flimsy on the wings, but they're very strong. But the higher you go, the faster they can fly, because the air is thinner. It's not a higher friction. As you get lower, which to be as low as you need to be to hit those buildings, these aircraft are moving at over 500, almost 600 miles an hour. in a very thick air. I don't know that that's necessarily possible.
You're looking at descent. You're not looking at that airspeed is based on a leveled off airspeed. So if you're leveled off at 10,000 speed as compared to being leveled off at 30,000 feet, that travel speed is different for anything that's at that height. But you actually can increase your speed above what you could possibly get with a descent.
So you're saying these aircraft were on a
that descent, any type of descent down, gravity helps.
Right.
Well,
So gravity's helps speeding them up.
Even if it's not on a descent or whatever, you're also talking about people who were not flying safely, who were flying with a purpose,
Right,
who were pushing it to its limit for the cause that they did. Now, if you combine that with the descent, I think it's very possible.
Yeah, and what I'm getting at is it's structurally. I don't know
If the plane would have held together.
Yes, that's my question, and I'm not a structural engineer. I don't know, but a fully loaded aircraft like that, could it have held up at almost over 500, almost 600 miles an hour, in a thick of air as you have, atmosphere as you have close to the ground?
I mean, that's I don't know.
The craziest thing to me always was they hit the World Trade Centers.
Yeah,
There's a lot of other things to dodge. There's a lot. So was that their intent, or was their intent just to hit New York? And that was preferred option number one, and they were tall enough and big enough, and Empire State Building could have easily ended up getting hit, could have been a target if they were in a different part of the city and coming in at a different angle. But that was the part that always got me. If that was really their intention to hit the World Trade Center, then they did have to put quite a bit of training into that, because you just send me up in a plane, I can hit the ground, but as far as dictating where exactly that's going to be, that'd be hard.
well, yeah. You look at the speeds the closing speed that you're going to have with that, with a jet airliner. I mean, definitely. And I didn't even think about that, but yeah, you're right. That is a very interesting way to look at it.
I mean, there's some really strange things that happened that day and beyond that. People look at and help fuel this conspiracy. The fact that they found passports of the terrorists on top of buildings when there was that big of a destruction, that's a strange thing that people can't wrap their head around.
I have not heard that. That is extremely odd.
Yeah, they found
that is
very odd.
Zahari or whatever his name was. They found his passport
on top of a
day.
building.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then you've got the fact that the building that replaced the World Trade Center is called One World Tower, which just goes right. Whoever named that, that feeds right into conspiracy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, because of the New World Order, One World Tower.
Have you visited?
Yes.
Said I was pretty disappointed. It's a shopping mall.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's a monument to consumerism, and not so much.
Now, I will say
that
the museum is excellent.
Yeah.
The one that's built underneath, that is by far one of the nicest places I've ever been. But then there's other strange stuff that happened. The fact that you have so many buildings around the Pentagon that had cameras, and we've not seen any of that footage except for that one part. Why not? Why don't you release that footage?
Well, there was even a gas station close by to the Pentagon too, and they actually took that footage.
Yeah, they took it, and and I'm not saying that it shows anything different than what we've been told, but I'm saying that would help.
What if it shows a weakness? What if it shows, if that had been the case in New York, then I would find that odd. But the fact that they even admitted that something hit the Pentagon, if there was any possible way they could have said, there was a bomb in here, we had an explosion in the air conditioning room, they would have done it. Like, they don't, you don't want footage of the Pentagon out. If you can avoid that. So I can kind of understand that. Again, that place is more sacred to these people than the White House or any other
and
government building.
Well, and that was the other thing that I was going to bring up. The fact that the side of the Pentagon that got hit was the side that was getting ready to be renovated. You know what I'm saying? Like that, and of course people latch onto these to try to make sense of something that just doesn't make sense. And I understand why there are conspiracy theories about it, but I just don't believe them. Yeah. I just don't latch on to them.
Well, you guys have any more conspiracies on 9/11?
I don't have any on 9/11, no, but I will say,
if we'd only been paying attention to Back to the Future, we would have known it was coming.
I will say that after 9/11, and we went after Saddam Hussein, there is a conspiracy theory that we only did that to gain access to a Stargate. Have you guys heard that?
No.
Yes.
I didn't hear that.
Apparently, in Babylon and all these, there was a Stargate, supposedly, and that I've actually heard American soldiers talk about the fact that they've seen things in Iraq that blew their mind. You know what I'm saying? Like when they were over there, and that some of their objectives didn't meet, like military, like it didn't make sense. They were to go into museums and things and take things that they needed from there. And I don't know how much of that's true.
Right.
Some of it I've read, some of it I've talked to, but yeah, I've heard that before.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That is
check
pretty
out.
wild.
You
Yeah.
know, you can check that out. Saddam Hussein Stargate, I think is how I first come across that.
That's pretty crazy.
And why am I much more comfortable talking about something like that?
Yeah.
Instead of like an actual, like it could have been a government takedown of it.
Right.
But I'm like, yeah, Stargates and ancient Babylon. Yeah, I can talk about that all day. That's fine. But
Oh, do you guys want to take a break or keep rolling?
It's up to you.
Guys, do we leave in the part where I think that Cronkite has definitely dyed his goatee?
Yeah.
There's some gray stick in that, but he's definitely dyed it.
Not
all
in a
this
few
old
years.
man talk. I see it in his hair, but I definitely see it in that well-groomed goatee.
Not in a few years. I haven't groomed it like that.
Survey says that's a lie.
Well, if you guys want to keep on going, we'll keep on going. We'll take a break. Up to you guys.
your show.
You're the captain of this.
All right. We'll take a break and be back
Take a
in just a moment.
lighter look into the darker side of the world. Join Elliott, Cherty, and Beagle as they jump into the dark abyss of hauntings, fables, UFOs, and beyond. The Spooky Family Podcast. You can find them where you listen to quality podcasts.
Are you a horror movie fan? Yeah, I dig horror movies. Are you searching for a great internet horror talk radio show to listen to? Why, sure, that sounds quite spiffy. Then you need to tune into deadpit.com. It's the original horror talk radio show. Dead Pit is a show by the fans and for the fans. Uncensored and unbiased opinions are the goal of the show, giving fans honest reviews on new films and vintage classics of the horror genre. Make deadpit.com your #1 horror station destination.
Greetings.
We come in peace.
Hello, everyone. I'm Goose.
I'm Cronkite.
Be sure to join us every Sunday at 10 p.m.
What are we joining them for?
for our show here to Chew Bubblegum.
That's exciting.
104.9 WXLR.
That's tough. I like it.
You like it?
I like it. 104.9 WXLR, one of my favorites.
Ear candy to the extreme on Here to Chew Bubblegum. Sunday nights, 10 p.m. on this station.
Looks good in this on. Roger. ACS arm switch is on. Okay, Victor. Landing rocket arm switch is on. Here comes the throttle. Circuit breakers in. We have separation. Inboard and outboards are on. We're coming forward with the side stick. All looks good. Roger. I've got a blowout. Vapor 3. Get your pitch to 0. Pitch is out. I can't hold altitude. Direction alpha is off. Trip selected emergency. Flight Tom, I can't hold it. She's breaking up. She's breaking.
Steve Austin, astronaut. A man barely alive. Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology. We have the capability to make the world's first bionic man. Steve Austin will be that man. Better than he was before. Better, stronger, faster.
And we're back to Here to Chew Bubblegum with Goose and Cronkite, and, there's two special guests who are prettier and nicer than them.
Yes. Thank you very much, Elliott, for that introduction.
You're more
Justin,
than welcome.
Talk Junkie, thank you. Cronkite.
Gooster.
How you doing over there?
Goosterford? That's a good one.
You doing okay over there?
I'm doing well. How are
Okay.
you?
We're going to start out this segment and talk about Ronald Reagan and his UFO obsession.
All right.
What do you think about that?
I'm ready.
Okay. Go ahead and talk a little bit. Let me set up something.
This is I just talked for 2 hours on conspiracies.
So that was in the last
Conspiracies.
show. It doesn't count.
Ronald Reagan was the former president of the United States of America. He was
Okay.
He really liked jelly beans.
Okay. Let me start out by playing this clip here real quick.
Mechanisms of the moment. We often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?
Now, Ronald Reagan said that on September 21st, 1987. And, we've talked about him on the show before. We've talked about his UFO obsession on the show before. He allegedly had 2 encounters. One was a possible abduction with him and his wife, Nancy, going to a party. Mm-hmm. And they lost time, and they realized that they were a couple of hours late. He, like I said, he said that on September 21st, 1987, and that's how he addressed the United Nations. He said that in his speech to the United Nations.
That's pretty wild.
So,
now, all right. So here's the thing I've taken away from what research we've done on Ronald Reagan is that he either he was he knew that there was a threat or something outside of this world, or he was pushing for a threat.
I don't think he was pushing for a threat. I think he knew that there was something outside from this planet. You mentioned E.T. earlier.
Yeah.
After a screening of E.T. at the White House,
This is awesome.
in the 80s, Ronald Reagan supposedly looks to Steven Spielberg and he says, "You don't know how close you've got it." All right, or something like that, or you don't know how close you came. Now, Steven Spielberg did not say that this was true until like 2012. So, I mean, just imagine. All right, the movie E.T., I'm sure you've saw that. Mm-hmm. Okay, and he told him, you don't know how close you've got it. Mm-hmm. Does that just not blow your mind for the possibilities?
Well, I'm trying to think of what part of E.T.
The Reese Pieces.
Yes.
They love Reese Pieces.
They-
That's actually how we're going to win the intergalactic battle. Is Reese
Give
Pieces.
out Reese Pieces.
No, I mean, I'm trying to figure out, like, the creature? The creature was right, or,
I guess, just take the alien technology aspect.
Or probably
You know.
like the fact that the government was so involved in retrieval and
possible,
trying
yeah.
to get the things.
And he's saying it from the point of view of somebody that knows how close they are. So he probably didn't elaborate on that much to Spielberg, because you got to look at it. If I say something that I have personal knowledge of, and I'll be like, you don't know how close you were to that, and then you look at me and go, well, explain it to me. Well,
Yeah.
So and then what do? You question the president,
Right.
But Carter, Reagan, and Clinton were all very optimistic, and Obama made statements. They were all very optimistic that they were just going to let the dogs out on this. They were going to let us know everything. Right. They didn't manage to do it.
The Spielberg connection, though, is very interesting. When you look at his movies and the fact that he has, in most of his movies, he has government backing. You know what I mean? Like, he
Yes.
gets to use government, like, vehicles, government, everything.
Right.
And you don't get to do that in Hollywood unless you're a very trusted individual.
Yeah, they vet the
Yeah.
story and everything pretty closely.
So to think about the fact that, a lot of his videos a lot of his movies have to do with, aliens. I'm thinking Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Yeah, third kind.
E.T., even stuff like AI. Have you ever watched the movie AI?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people don't like that movie, but I actually like that movie.
I thought
Right,
it was
me
good.
too. And I think, wasn't he involved in Minority Report too, and all of that stuff.
He might have been an associate producer, executive producer.
Still, to think of all that stuff. Now, real quick to get back to Reagan, but I wanted to share this story. So, actress Shirley MacLaine tells a story that she heard from comedian Lucille Ball about Ronald. And so, it's a story told to a person, told to us. So, it might not be anything. But she heard from comedian Lucille Ball about Ronald and Nancy Reagan arriving several hours late to a party and explaining that they had an encounter with aliens along the Sepulveda Pass. The story says, Ronald Reagan told Lucy that he and Nancy were driving on Mulholland Drive when a UFO landed near their vehicle. Although the story had been told before, a number of new details were added. For example, Shirley MacLaine says Lucille Ball told her that Reagan claimed a ladder appeared and an alien climbed out of the craft. The alien told him to quit his acting work and go into politics. And that was the year that he quit acting and actually started
going into politics.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's out there. So, I don't know.
Now, we've talked about this before in the Reagan diary in 86. Reagan wrote in there, met with top scientists today. I've learned of that our shuttle capacity could orbit 300 people in 1986.
Yeah, and he kept been talking about the NASA shuttle.
No, because at that time, maybe 10, 7?
Well, they had a crew of 7, but I mean, even if you packed them into the look at the cargo bay, and you took all the
you still couldn't get 300
stuff, and I don't think you can get 300 in there.
And then in 1985, when he met with Mikhail Gorbachev, who was the leader of Russia,
this is a true story too. This has been verified by their. Well, it was verified by Gorbachev, but it was also verified by his interpreter.
Yes. Reagan asked him while taking a break during some peace talks, what would you do if the United States were suddenly attacked by someone from outer space? Would you help us? And Gorbachev responded, no doubt about it. We would too. That's interesting.
Let's not ask the new guy that. Because I don't think Russia's going to be on board.
No,
not
all right. Honestly, I mean, think about something for a second. If there is an outside force, I mean, you're going to have a real life Independence Day movie.
Yeah, except for I don't think China cares enough to help. I think they would do anything that would benefit themselves. I think it's a good idea, but you're looking at a rough country there.
Well, they're getting to the point now where they're realizing that they can make stuff and technology. They're one of the biggest, fastest growing technology centers in the world.
Yeah,
like they will surpass us eventually.
2049.
Yeah.
I think is their goal.
Yeah, so I mean, if it could benefit them and get there quicker, yeah, of course they're gonna.
People always say the same thing. If there's going to be aliens, why don't they just pull up on the front lawn of the White House and go and talk to the president? And then you come and say, okay, well, Nixon swears he's got knowledge on aliens, and Reagan seems to have knowledge on aliens, and Carter seemed to have an experience, and Clinton seemed to have an experience, and something had Obama's interest peaked. Mm-hmm. Okay, and Trump did what he did with the disclosure. Okay, so maybe they are. You know, maybe there's not valet parking at the White House, and they got to go in the back door. I don't know. Okay, now you look at Trump. You look at Reagan's vice president. You know who he was. Mm-hmm. He was the former head of the CIA. He's an alleged member of the Majestic 12. So, nothing was said during his presidency. No. He kept that pretty quiet. Well, and in his older years, he was asked. And we've talked about that on the show too. George Bush Sr. What was it he said?
I can't remember the exact.
You can't handle the truth or something. He's
a diehard company man. So, he's a diehard CIA guy, and I don't know that they've not had disclosure for any nefarious reason. Maybe they really think. There's been times I don't think we could have handled it as a society. And again, I think now we're dumbed down enough to a certain degree that it's not going to make that big of an impact. But Reagan's an interesting character.
Yes, he is.
The things that he put an emphasis on, the space program, it did pretty good under Reagan, and it basically died. Not long after that. A lot of long-term funding that run out that had come into place under Reagan, we got to the point where we were hitching a ride to space as far as NASA went.
Let's see. George Bush Sr. took UFO secrets to the grave because Americans couldn't handle the truth. And so he did say when asked, you can't handle the truth. So, I do think that George Bush had knowledge
I was looking
from
it up.
his affiliation.
I was looking it up, but he made me too. But if you want to know his last words were, "I love you too." That's what I found.
Okay. Well,
I don't think he was talking to you.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Just trying to help.
Barbara, probably.
You have to look at it too. Like, if somebody come down today, if aliens, did land on the White House lawn, what would that do to Americans today? Like, it's different than what it would have done in the 50s. It's different than how we would have handled it in the 60s. But there's still a lot of fundamental, like, the same. Religion would be torn apart.
Immediately.
And in religion...
Or
religion,
extremely strengthened.
yeah,
That's
well,
possible. To some
that-
sects, it's
those-
going extremely strengthened.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Either way. And, I mean, religion doesn't necessarily have to be proven wrong. There's going to be an uproar because, you've got too many different beliefs out there right now. Then you also have the fact that people like Elon Musk, people like Bill Gates, these people who have made millions and billions of dollars on technology, now they really don't have a foot anymore because their technology will pale in comparison to whatever, life outside
Musk.
of...
Musk might be an alien.
There's that possibility. But then, I mean, so there's, religion, economics, everything like that goes up. Military. How is your military going to stop something like that?
Well, we work under this assumption that they're a more intelligent race than us. If they're a more intelligent species than us, then they have to have a pretty fair understanding of how we work, especially psychologically.
Right.
It would not be in our best interest and may make it harder for them if they do. Just imagine what that does to your sense of security if they just pull up on the White House lawn. So maybe it's okay that you want to ease these people into it. When we found, I forget what the chimps were, the lion chimps or whatever that slept under the trees and fought the lions. These big huge chimps. That's equivalent to them finding us. If they're that advanced. And you've got to be easy on how you interact with that species and how you come in. Now, granted, we're a little further ahead than an ape or a chimp, but they still have to look at it intelligently how they interact with us. So I don't think they're just going to pull up on the front line. But how many presidents you guys spoke about it? I don't remember who it was now that actually met with them and signed the treaty. Eisenhower. Yeah. I mean, there's quite a bit of, documentation, or at least, people willing to speak to that possibly happening. They're doing the things that people, if they're actually doing these things, they're doing what people keep saying, well, why don't they do this? Well, they are doing it, but they're doing it in a certain manner, a manner probably more beneficial for us and keeping us from being as fearful as we would be.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think if you look at the way a lot of people would react. Everyone hoarded toilet paper last year for some reason during the outbreak. I mean, how are they going to react to an alien force? And maybe that's the way the governments are handling this is, our people are stupid and they're not going to handle this well, so let us ease them into it. But also, I really like that shiny gadget you got there. How do we trade for that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, Sager, I think it was Sager, I know some other people have said it, look at what we do when we found, especially you look at Columbus and Spaniards and especially in South America and what they did to these cultures and look at how we treat new people, look how we treat people that we don't know or people that we live on the same planet with and I think a lot of people live under that fear. Well, that's what they're coming here to do is wipe us out. But if they're that much smarter than us and they're that far ahead of us time-wise, maybe they got past the most ignorant aspect of human nature, which is violence and war. And, I would look at it differently. Any civilization that put the time and effort into being able to come that far, they didn't get it by warring with each other.
Yeah.
Because who knows, who's to say that we couldn't be halfway to where they are right now if we were more focused on, advancement, advancement as an entirety, as a whole race, as a human race, instead of as an ethnic group or a religious group or a country. I've seen tons of shots from space, and I know it's burst the bubble of flat earthers, but I've never seen a border in one of those shots. And, that is the possibility of a fake invasion, maybe those borders, and not to get religious or to get prophetic, but, everybody talks about this one world, this government and this and that, I think that's kind of what the UN tried, but I don't think it has to go to that level, but it could be a one world community to where it was more, even from a religious aspect, you're looking at three major religions basically, Jewish, Christian, and Islamic, and they all, and they fully know and understand this for the most part, especially in other countries. They all worship the same exact God. You've got the major difference is, the Muslim faith recognizes Muhammad as the main prophet and Christ as a prophet, and Christianity, views Christ as the Son of God, and the Jewish religion doesn't believe that he's been born yet. Mm-hmm. So, there's minor differences separating them. And there's been a lot of wars fought over that, but, that could be the thing to unify those people,
yes. I agree. And, but also...
But that brings up a good point when we go back to Project Bluebeam.
Yeah.
It's also a way that you could use that to your advantage if aliens aren't real and the government's trying to use disclosure as a thing to get people under their control. One of the things I read on Twitter the other day, somebody posted on Twitter, they said, what would you do if you could speak to everyone telepathically? What would you say that would cause the most problems? And they joked and they said, I would say, I am the one that you call God, and you were right about me in your religion that you believe.
Oh.
And he said, imagine what would happen. Everybody in the world would go insane.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
So now imagine if, there's no such thing as aliens, but the government's and then I'm just saying imagine it.
Right.
And there's no such thing as aliens, and the government is putting out these videos, and then all of a sudden they reveal that, hey, we've been in constant contact with them, and guess what? Your religions are wrong. They're right, but they've just got this one part wrong, and here's the one part. Now everybody can be controlled by the people who are speaking to the people who know about your religion. I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm not throwing that out there. I'm just saying that there are positives to this, and there are very big negatives to this, and you have to be very, very
But you're
careful.
not going to control fanaticism even with that statement. You won't control zealots and religious fanatics. Most people are religious. That's a positive part of their life, and it kind of equates to a positive impact societally. But you're going to have these people that are just fanatical to a degree, and that's, to me, one of the most important parts of the United States is that separation of church and state. You don't see that in a lot of these war-torn countries. Iran in particular, before we destroyed a good thing in Iran, and I think it's pretty well documented. We're the ones that did it. But before we did that, they had a fairly decent separation of that to where they could have their beliefs and live under those doctrines but still be governed in a way that was socially responsible. And,
Well, I think also another point besides the religious aspect of it is, and until you figure out the money situation, the greed is a lot of what people strive for in the world and why people will never get along. If you got to the point where we were a non-monetary system, where we were just working strictly for the progress of humanity, that's when you're going to see the biggest.
Well, you get an alien force that's intelligent enough to come here. They're intelligent enough to know that gold doesn't have a value. There is no monetary value to anything. And, I don't want to. It's a hard thing to say and not be misconstrued the wrong way, but I have no issue whatsoever with capitalism. I think it affords people a lot better chance than other people get that are under different forms of rule and different forms of economic standard. I don't have an issue with that, but it would be out the door if we had a race come here that said, here's free energy.
Yeah.
Here's the ability. Food can be chemically produced to a point that is more sustainable and definitely more absorbable by the body than, the methods that you're using, then that becomes an issue. You don't need petroleum anymore. That does become an issue, and that could be why disclosure's held off to the point to where maybe they're at a point to where they don't think they're going to be able to hide what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
a good
kind of
possibility.
what I was getting at there. If you got to the point where you had 0 point energy, where we could access that every day, and with no issue, what's the point of having to worry about pipelines and
we
oil?
live in a world where Nestle tried to buy the rights to water, to all of the water.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
That's crazy.
Well, to go back to Reagan, I was very, very young at the time. I can just talk, based on what I've seen and read over the times. But, you're anarchist and you're punks and you're anti-capitalist. Reagan was the devil to them. He was one of the most hated presidents to that segment of society. But when you really look at it, Reagan didn't do anything to perpetuate any system that wasn't already in place.
Right.
And, just his statements, that he made to the UN are a pretty good indication that even if he's not seen anything, even if this is completely fake and we're wasting our time discussing it's not real, he at least understood that there is a definite positive outcome to us being united for one cause. And that's the big takeaway from that for me. Even if he's wrong, or not saying he never says anything definite, but even if it is just a statement to kind of try to get people to think, it is something that people should sit down and think about. I mean, the pandemic was almost an exercise in that. And okay, here is this alien. I mean, it's something that is not. It has a place in nature, but go ahead and send the hate emails to talkjunkie@gmail.com. But it was obviously man-made, and I don't think that there's a lot of debate for that left anywhere. There's a lot of debate left in the United States on CNN and Fox, and there's debate there. But globally and on a scientific scale, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of debate of that. We just don't get a whole lot of that here in the country. So you've got an outside force that's come in, and maybe it's a test run, and we failed pretty miserably. We proved that a large section of us could be led basically anywhere you want by the nose. But we also proved that we can be pretty selfish as a whole, as a collective, and that's disappointing. And that's not to say you're always going to see and hear the negative far more than you are the positive. The positive is going to be a much quieter voice. It always will. They don't need to be heard. They just need to do what they need to do. And that's not to say that we did that as a whole, but it did show there's great potential for that there. So that's what worries me, that if something like this comes along, if the Germans were still here, and the documentary you guys mentioned a while back, they obviously, if it was an aggressive force, would have most definitely sided with that aggressive force and tried to take over the world. There's going to be that group of people that want to do that. And that's troublesome. But I have no fear of what is coming. If something is coming, we can only base it on science fiction. We only base it on what we've seen. Everybody's seen the Klingon. You've not. You're too young.
No, I've seen that.
Everybody has seen this negative portrayal, but that's because that's kind of what we feed off of, especially entertainment-wise. And I don't think that's because we're bad people. Take horror films. Horror films are not necessarily glorifying a negative aspect of human existence. Maybe it's more a release of, I've not been in that situation. And, I don't think you have to put a negative connotation to everything. And the idea that this negative force is coming to get us, I think that's just our natural reaction. I think we enjoy that to a certain degree as humans.
Well, before we move on to the next topic, I will say one thing about Reagan. I think, in my opinion, he was one of the most honest presidents that we've had in the last 40 years.
He was probably the funniest, too.
Well, and yes, he was. Yes, he was. He had a great sense of humor.
My favorite thing ever is when, right after he had, the assassination attempt, and he's speaking in Germany, and a balloon pops, and he pauses, and he looks around, and he goes, "Miss me." That's the funniest thing in the world.
But for him, and this is coming up on social media a lot lately, he said and quoted one of the scariest phrases that you'll ever hear is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help you."
Yeah. Well, you've had presidents try to give us that warning over time. The first time military-industrial complex was ever mentioned in a speech, was that Roosevelt? I believe it was
Yeah.
or Eisenhower.
No, Eisenhower was the
Eisenhower.
one because he was. I mean, he'd saw it firsthand.
Yeah, and we did not heed that warning at all. But Reagan,
Well,
I think-
Washington. If you go back all the way to Washington, he warned of a two-party system.
Yeah.
He said it would be the downfall of politics, and
that's pretty accurate prediction. You look at Reagan. To me, the only thing that, and I wouldn't call it a negative on Reagan's end. I think it's a negative on how we kind of let the government get out of control. I think the Iran-Contra and things of that nature are kind of proof. That's the first time you've seen that you've got a guy in here trying to do a job, and what he's allowed to do is limited because somebody else is kind of pulling the strings.
Right.
plausible deniability.
There you
You
go.
don't let him know what's going on, and then he can't tell you.
Well, I don't think he would have accepted it. I really don't.
Well, it's the same thing with JFK.
You look at Nancy's beliefs on from Dyer and all that, and then CIA introducing crack cocaine to the United States. I don't see Reagan being on board with that.
No, not at all. Well, moving on to time travelers. Cronkite, what's your favorite time traveler story?
Elliott.
Yeah, Elliott, obviously.
Elliott.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
It's a good one.
It's a good one, Justin.
Still going. It's still going. Time travel story of Elliott.
What about you, Elliott?
My favorite time travel story is I have two.
Okay.
And I want to show you this. First of all, how many people have ever saw a painting from 1860 called The Expected? Have you ever heard that?
I have heard of it. I've not saw it.
I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to pass. I know this is
wasn't born then. Goose was just in high school.
No. Now, I know this is a radio program, but if you're out there looking, okay, it is called The Expected, and it was painted in 1860, okay? I'm going to pass this around, and I want you to look at this woman and what she is doing and tell me what you think.
Oh, she's on an iPhone.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have said that until.
Whoa.
It's just so obvious. Like there's.
Is this legit from
Is that my
1860?
Is that my wife?
Yes, that's a legit
Scrolling
painting.
Facebook.
And what was the name of it?
The Expected.
Wow, that's mind blowing. That is mind blowing. Huh. Can you know who painted it? Can you give us a little background
I
on
can't
it?
pronounce his name.
Elliott. Elliott was his first name.
It's Ferdinand George Waldmuller. He's from Austria.
How was that last name again?
Wald, Waldmuller.
Insert generic German last name here.
Yeah, and he, I don't really know the story behind it.
He's from
I've
Austria.
seen it 1,000 times. But my other favorite one, and this is one that I think it's been debunked, but it's still an awesome. Well, I don't know if it's been debunked or not, to be honest with you. But let me tell you about Andrew Carlson. Have you ever heard of Andrew Carlson?
Yes.
Okay. So Andrew Carlson was supposedly arrested in March 2003 for SEC violations for making 126 high-risk stock trades and being successful on every single one. As reported, Carlson started with an initial investment of $800 and ended with over $350 million, which drew the attention of the SEC. Later reports suggested that after his arrest, he submitted a 4-hour confession where he claimed to be a time traveler from 200 years in the future. He offered to tell investigators such things as the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden and the cure for AIDS in return for a lesser punishment and to be allowed to return to his time craft. Although he refused to tell investigators the locations or workings of his craft, a mysterious man posted his bail and Carlson was scheduled for a court hearing, but he was never seen again, and records show that there was no proof of his existence. Now,
I don't think that's ever been debunked.
well, a lot of people seem to think that this was originally reported in like Weekly World News or whatever, but I don't think anybody's ever truly been able to be able to prove it. And I thought that was an awesome story. Like, to make that much money on the stock market, to never miss on any of your investments, that's just pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
But those are my two favorite time traveler.
What about you?
I'm gonna number one is easily something I've newly been introduced to, and that's the Ingersoll Lockwood deal. I mean, you guys have, and like I was telling you guys earlier, I've not heard a lot of that anywhere else, and there's not a lot of information out there on it. So I think you guys really touched on that pretty early on.
Thank you.
And I mean, it. The biggest thing is the tie-in with Tesla. I don't know that he would be capable of creating such a thing, but I think he would be capable of dreaming it up. I mean, his mind worked in a way that I don't think many other people's works.
No, he was a genius, you know.
No
very
doubt.
much so.
And I don't know. There's a lot of things there that the process I like to look at is, one, is there any scientific basis in it? And with time travel, okay, we cannot do it, but we can mathematically put the probability out there. Einstein looked at it. A lot of people looked at it. And Einstein was wrong about a lot of things, but his fundamentals were often dead on. And so there's the basis for it. It's possible. And then you look at, okay, are we looking at coincidence compared to evidence? And there's a lot in those books that's really hard, from the Pence name to Trump cast. Like there's a lot that it's hard for it to all be coincidence.
Yeah.
You know, and so to me that's one of the most compelling, because I've never really seen one that I felt was super compelling. To be honest with you, until that point, I don't know if I could name one that I would even give enough time to really put the effort into researching. And I didn't look at that as really a time travel one at first. I looked at it as, wow, these are cool coincidences.
Yeah.
And then the more I looked at it, I was like, that's a hard coincidence to come up with. If the guy's name was Eddie Tramp and he lived in Tramp Town, all right, that's somewhat of a, you know, and his vice president was Pants. You know, okay, that's a coincidence. But, wow, the Fifth Avenue thing in New York and the last president, like that's hard.
Not only was the writing very it sounded like him, but if you look at the illustrations of the book, I mean, they're almost spot on to the Baron and Donald.
And you look at them trying to hide this. They the lawsuits over the books, and you know, the problem, and it'll always be a problem. Like, you know, the Nostradamus stuff. I don't believe in predictions at all in any way, shape, or form. And the Nostradamus stuff, to me, I read that and I'm like, you know, I could get 30 different outcomes.
Translations.
Yeah, I don't understand what people are getting excited about. But when you see this, okay, well, we only got to see it after Barron Trump was born, and we only get to see it after. And that's always where I rule out something like that. I'm like, okay, let me know this before. Well, how could you have known it before? Like, that's something that really didn't occur to me at first, and something I had to kind of wrap my head around is you've got to suspend that part of it for a little bit, because without it actually happening in real time, then there's no basis for comparison. You know, if Donald Trump wasn't already president and he didn't already have a son named Barron Trump, you know, how do I, and I never heard about this, and how do we know that he ever heard about this? We don't know he named his kid Barron Trump and chose Pence. I can assure you, not to get political, that Pence was probably the last choice that Trump would have made. He's not a party guy, and he's running with a party that he didn't identify with for almost 25 years. You know, that's probably the last guy he's going to pick, and it didn't work out very good in the end. But, you know, it's far beyond coincidence to me. You know, if I was going to go out on a limb and say I believe in one having any real viability, just based on my limited knowledge on the subject, that would definitely be it.
I totally agree with you on that. I mean, you know, that's a fascinating one. We've talked about it on the show several times. And I'm sure when new information comes to light, or, you know, additional information, we'll talk about it again. And we talked about this during a break. It still amazes me that we can't find a lot of information about Ingersoll Lockwood.
No, not at all. And you would think someone who is a published novelist, who is an attorney. A lawyer in New York, in the city of New York,
who even spoke, you know, during the Civil War times, you know.
You would think he'd have a bigger paper trail.
Well, get the tinfoil hat ready. If we discovered something as a society, if whoever initially found this discovered this, and they go, okay, we don't need that information out there. We need to take away. How do you know exactly what point to go back to? I mean, obviously you can go back to Lockwood and do away with him. Okay, you just go back and kill him before he does any of this. Well, what if enough stuff came out of his company and enough stuff came out of what he done that they can't sacrifice that? Okay, so then you say, well, let's just go back and get rid of Trump and him not be president. What if there's just one bill or one allotment of money or one thing that's very important? So how far can you go back? What can you actually do to remove it? And maybe that's why there's very little information. Maybe there's very few things that they can nitpick and take out and not affect the trajectory that they wanted to gain by manipulating that time travel.
That's a very good idea. I've never thought about it that way before. Elliot?
Yeah. Sorry, I was looking at stuff. I apologize.
You're fine. You're fine. One of my favorite, or several of my favorite time travel stuff is I like to get on YouTube and watch some of the time traveler videos from like motion pictures from like, back in the 20s and stuff when you see the woman, looks like she's typing on an iPhone and, those. I like those pretty good. And one from the 90s that shows the guy at the Mike Tyson fight. And people claim that he has an iPhone, taking pictures.
I did see that one. It's interesting.
So, and I did a little research on that one years ago, and there was a camera at that time that you could hold upright like that had a similarity to an iPhone.
Well, they had those long, skinny ones.
Yeah.
That you could, if you turned it up on its end, it would kind of resemble as well.
Yeah. So, but, some of those are fascinating.
Were you
for
alive
me.
when Tyson was fighting?
I was.
Okay.
I was born in 85.
But by listening to the show, I thought you were 12.
Oh.
Because he denies any knowledge of anything beyond.
You were born in 85.
I was born in 85.
My brother was born in 85, so I know how old you are now.
So you were like 2 years old when Mike Tyson's Punch-Out came out.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm not much older than you, because I was just born in 82.
No, I just like giving him hell because he's
ancient.
He's just a dick, and it's kind of fun.
Thanks, man. I
You're
appreciate that.
Are you giving me looks, Elliot? You want me to turn on you too?
What?
What? This show just got violent and went off
I know.
the rails.
What did I do? I don't even know. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, though, considering what this show was, how we all like Art Bell.
Yeah.
I think we'd be remiss without saying John Teeter, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And that was a good one. I really bought into that when that first came out.
I just want to throw this out there. Anyone who time travels and is maybe listening, talk to us.
I have one sitting straight across from me.
Yeah, but
according to you,
he's not giving any information. I want to talk to someone who's
told
actually.
You, don't go to Jenny Wiley Lodge and eat bison with goose.
Hey, I had an invitation for you. If you want to meet up at Jenny Wiley later on this week,
I'm busy.
I'll buy your dinner for you.
Smart move.
He can't give lottery numbers because the way it works is once he's come back, small changes have been made.
Ugh.
So those things, he can only impact what's going to go forward. But anything once he comes back becomes all random in front of him.
Isn't that the most convenient way of explaining why?
Sounded good to me.
You're sounding very good.
That's
You're
really
absolutely
like
useless. I don't need you.
John Titor. I love it. They're like, well, all this would have happened if he hadn't come and told the story. But now that he told the story, none of it will happen.
Yeah, well, I mean,
actually, Justin's explanation of that too makes me think he's a time traveler.
I think he is. I'll be honest with you. And I'll be honest with you. If you can't give me lottery numbers, what good are you? Just get out of here.
I can give you lottery numbers. I just can't tell you when those numbers are going to hit.
And that was part 2 of our Roundtable show.
I was wrong. It beat it. It was pretty good.
Hey, I would say I told you so. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I told you so.
You didn't tell me so.
Yeah, I did.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
Rewind the tape.
No. Next week on the show, we will have our friend Eli will be joining us.
Excellent. It was a good time when Eli comes by.
A very good time.
I'm
Go
just
ahead,
going to let you know the Comic-Con thing again. So on July 31st, we're going to be there, Appalachian Wireless Arena. We're going to be walking around talking to everyone. Probably do a couple shows, maybe do some interviews. But that's July 31st, and their website is pikevillecomiccon.net. And they also have a Facebook page, or you can contact the E-Store Comic and Tech Shop on Facebook, or call 606-263-4946. Like I said, we're going to be there. If you come by, see us, say hi. If you want to be on the radio, tell us you want to be on the radio. We will get you took care of.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. That'll do it for this week. I'm going to say special thanks to Carlin for all the voiceover work, CK Uncle Bill, and the rest of the gang at deadbed.com, T-Shirt Joe at fastcustomshirts.com. Be sure to check out Talk Junkie with our friend Justin and Down on the Holler with Jordan and Brad. Again, that'll do it for this week. We will see you next week, and until then, so long for now.
We'll see you.
Thanks for listening to Here to Chew Bubblegum. Tune in next time as we dive deeper into things the government doesn't want us to know.